through his own luck and talent, and more because he died before his 33rd birthday. Alexander has done much to shape the Western image of the youthful hero. Small, fair-haired, pale-eyed, and boyish, he was unconventional, impatient, swaggeringly confident, always proven right when he defied the wisdom of his elders, and a man who fought in a way that was as clever as it was ferocious. Leading from the front, he won more victories than any fictional hero, in a spectacular, live-fast, die-young career that briefly made him master of much of the known world. If in reality he never wept because there were no more worlds to conquer, or sheathed his sword for lack of argument, it does not diminish what he did in such a short time. Only in the modern mechanized era have a few armies managed to advance so fast for such a long period as Alexander's men. Philip was not dubbed the Great, nor indeed was Alexander until the Roman period, and he was inevitably overshadowed by his son. When Philip is remembered, it is as part of Alexander's story, the old man too drunk to cross the floor when he lost his temper with his son. One-eyed and limping from his many wounds, he can seem worn out and little more than an obstacle to his dazzlingly talented child. In contrast, none of Alexander's wounds were permanently disfiguring, and he never got the chance to grow old. Centuries later, the Emperor Augustus permitted no sculpture, statue, painting, or coin to show him aging beyond his 20s. But this was tight control of his public image, and not an accurate reflection of a man who lived into his 70s and had bad teeth. Alexander also tightly controlled his image, but unlike Philip or the Roman emperor, he died before old age became an issue. Yet without Philip, there could have been no Alexander, for Philip reshaped Macedonia, making it bigger, stronger, and more united, and also created the army from scratch and even the plan to attack Persia. His son inherited all of this at the perfect moment and age for him to chance his luck and win far greater glory. Philip died at 46, and it is too easy to forget that he was at most 23 when he became king. Then he was the young, handsome, unscarred, and charismatic monarch, with only modest military achievements in his own right, but with the confidence and energy to save a kingdom on the brink of dismemberment and turn it into a military and economic powerhouse. The story of how he did this is well worth telling in its own right, apart from being essential to understanding what his son did. Still, Alexander casts a very long shadow. Another youthful hero, let alone his father, does not easily fit with his image. Just as Julius Caesar must always be the elderly lover of Cleopatra, and Mark Antony the dashing younger man, even if the latter was in his middle 50s when he took his own life, at most a couple of years younger than Caesar on the Ides of March. On the whole, the Romans get far more attention than the Greeks in fiction, screen dramas, and even documentaries. The discovery in the 1980s of the royal tombs at Vergina in northern Greece and the possible identification of one set of remains as Philip briefly produced a surge of attention. But otherwise, even Alexander receives no more than occasional coverage on television, usually connected with his battles. 2 Hollywood epics have tried to tell his story, with Richard Burton playing the role in 1956 and Colin Farrell in 2004. But each film struggled because the sheer breadth of the tale is very hard to fit into a few hours of screen time. In both, we have Philip as the old man, more or less a spent force, and a story that gets going only when he is murdered and makes way for Alexander. My own love of the ancient world began with the Romans, and specifically the Romans in Britain and the Roman army, although as my interest grew, like everyone else, I soon realized that Rome can only be understood in the context of classical and Hellenistic Greece. In my childhood, Alexander was little more than a name, and my fondness for cinematic epics meant that I avidly watched the Richard Burton